G'day YouTube, Warbles on a lot here. Don't you just hate it when finger trouble ends a video prematurely? So welcome to part 2 of the recipe for cooking a lead donut. In part 1 we cut the slab off the billet. We're now cutting the slab into 4 pieces, and I have already taken the mould out of the water drum where it was soaking because it's a partly wood and a partly metal mould. So the show goes on. There we go. And of course, you guessed it. Now, I get to cut the halves in half. Isn't this fun? Experiencing all the manifold joys of self-sufficiency, assuming you've already got the produced means of production left behind by previous generations. Assuming that they left it in a condition where it can still be used, and assuming that you've hung on to it and haven't cast it aside and decided that some much more modern method was a better way of doing things. Because of course it's very difficult to do this job if you've thrown all your ancestral stuff into landfill for not being shiny and new enough. Okay, so the mould has surface dried, and yeah, you can see there's bits of daylight coming through, so we have to seal those holes up. And if I was a proper foundryman, I'd probably use clay or casting sand or, something conventional. But, clay's just powdered dirt, and the soil around here's got a layer of clay under it. So the theory is that I've got some fairly fine powdery dirt, and if I add just a little bit of water, I can mix myself up something that'll behave almost, but not quite exactly like clay in this particular application. And then I just sort of scoop up my not quite clay and jam it in there. And the wood's ever so slightly wet, so the wet dirt sticks to it. Gets moulded into place. And this is pretty much more of an illustration than anything, because the work of it is going to be done on the inside. And the idea is that the hot lead will be trying to push the clay or mud into the crack. Right, so that is all kind of plugged up on the inside, and hopefully it'll work. Only get one try at it. So we'll sit that there on the tray waiting. Put the first lump of lead into the crucible, homemade, new and improved, as you can see. So we replace the kettle on the kitchen stove with a crucible. full of lead. And we wait. While we drink our mysterious harmonic coffee, while opening the window to ventilate the lead fumes, because, you know, occupational health and safety, I guess. While the lead is melting, we go and we grab the ancestral grandfatherly tongs. You watching all this? Hey? You taking all this in? Hey? Paying attention to the ways of the humans? The eagle-eyed will see that this particular lead donut is slightly out of shape. Deliberately, to make room for the tunnel, the cutout, into which the hose clamp's action will be recessed. Lead not yet melting, but the pot is getting hot. The first molten lead is commencing to run. It's fascinating, isn't it? Yes, you're a good little student. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. You're a good student. Okay, one melted. Number two, into the pot. And the heat of the molten lead at the bottom melts the new cold lump. As it melts, it subsides. Just about time for the next one. Three down. Inserting number four, which has submerged more or less straight away. It's taking less time to melt than it took to cut the lead. Cold layer on top, obviously, not ready yet. Okay, now we're getting more like it. A little coating of slag floating on the top. Mind you, don't get the idea that I know what I'm doing. This is the third time in my life that I have ever melted metal and cast it. Okay, so we're starting to boil, so I think I'll take that little bit of slag out. Okay, let's try very hard not to make a mess of this. That's the price of having wet wood. But I have learned that the price of trying to cool it down too rapidly is the water splashes all over the place and it makes a bit of a mess of the job. But you'll notice there's no leaks from down around the bottom. I think that's going to work. So yeah, I can smell a bit of burnt pine. Just give the wood a bit of access to some thermal mass. And behold, a water-cooled mould with a wooden base. No steam explosions. And because the outside of the mould is a stainless steel chimney pipe, you just undo the seam to take the outer side off, cut the wire and press the steel drain pipe out of the inside. Now presumably the lead has shrunk to the point where hydraulic pressure is pushing water up to an outside of the mould and the still hot lead. All told, hasn't done too bad for a homegrown rig with the correct ancestral tools and the right frame of mind for a mad scientist hillbilly. But you know how it goes. You can't just go into a shop and buy a lead doughnut. If you want a lead doughnut, you really kind of got to go and make your own. And the theory is, the first time you try to teach yourself to do something you've never done before, it should work. The first time it's okay if it doesn't work. The second time it should work. And the third time it should be better than what you can buy in the shops. Well, that's the second time I tried to cast anything and you can't buy it in the shops. So, even if this thing looks like shit, I think it's still going to work better than the one you can't buy in the shops. So, there you go, and now you know. With a few old bits and ancient bobs, you can do quite a lot. And this time, yes, you can read the maker's name, you can read the weight, and you can read the date. 2nd October 2019. So without having to file anything, as ugly as it is, this thing does what it's supposed to do. Straight out of the box, so to speak, at least. Straight out of the mould. 2.5 kilogram 2019 Firefighting Lead Doughnut. No self-respecting hillbilly mad scientist should be without at least one of them. Because they work, you know, like really, really well. It's not as if they're terribly, horribly, particularly complicated to cobble up from the bits and bobs that your average self-respecting hillbilly probably has, just more or less lying around waiting for the next time one needs to use them. So, yes, come on, yes, that's something you don't learn every day, isn't it, hey? How to make a firefighting lead doughnut. Definitely a different style of a thing to be cobbling up on the kitchen stove. But I never said this channel was going to be full of normal stuff. Did I? Warbles on a lot to YouTube. Ciao.